Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. We're gonna put the car in full self-driving. We're gonna let it take me to my destination. In today's video, I wanna discuss the state of the transportation sector, and I really wanna go through a bunch of ideas that I've been thinking through from the standpoint of what is the cost of transportation gonna be with full self-driving technology. As you can see here, I am currently driving a car, a Tesla Model Y, that has the ability to drive itself. It is a beta version, which means I am still 100% responsible for the car, and I need to be paying attention at all times and intervene when needed to really ensure that the car is doing the right thing. However, I'm gonna allow the car to do its thing as much as possible. And if you see me tugging on the steering wheel from time to time, that's me letting the car that I'm alive, and it will sort of tell me here on the screen that I should be paying attention, or I should be tugging on the steering wheel to let it know that I'm alive. And that's just a mechanism the car has to ensure that I'm still responsible. So if you see me doing that, that's what that is, for those that are not familiar with self-driving Tesla. So yeah, so for today's video, I've really been thinking through my relationship with my car in the last couple weeks. I received the latest version of Tesla's full self-driving, which is version 11.3.6, and I've had version 11 for the last, call it, what is it now, 2 weeks almost, and it's really changed my relationship with the car. So I've kind of went from the car needing assistance to get around, like, you know, I am assisting the car to get to point A to point B by driving it 80 to 90% of the time, to me just letting the car do its thing, you know, letting the car just drive me around, and then I might need to step in once in a while. And you might see this on the strip to kind of like demonstrate my point here. It's gotten to the point now where I would say over 99% of my time spent in the car in the driver's seat is not driving. And that's weird. It's completely weird. It's very, very weird. Still paying attention, still attentive, but just letting the car do its thing. And one of the things I've really been thinking through a lot is, as we sort of see this technology progress, while I turn down the AC so I don't burn up in this awesome Texan sun, what is the relationship going to be now with a person and a car, or a transportation unit, I want to call it, right? What does it mean when we have all these things on the road that are no longer requiring a driver, and this thing right here, the steering wheel and the pedals in front of my feet, just go away? You know, what does that relationship mean, and what does it mean from a cost perspective? And that's the bigger thing I want to get into, because if you really think about what it means to, say, ride a taxi, or calling an Uber, or calling an Lyft, what that means is that you're paying for somebody. Really, most of the cost of the ride is paying somebody to come and pick you up. And so when Uber charges you $60 to go to the airport, $80 to go to the airport, Uber's probably taking, I don't know, $10 of that, but then the rest of it's going to the Uber driver or Lyft driver for their time. And then they'll use that money to pay for gas, pay for electricity, you know, for maintenance for the car, so on and so forth. Let this car complete this right turn on the yield, and it does so a little bit hesitant. I'm gonna press the gas pedal here. These are the sometimes, like I said before, the car will need help from time to time, and I sort of hit the gas pedal there a little bit to make the right turn. But what does that mean for the cost of transportation? What does that mean for, you know, hailing a car that drives itself? So if there was an Uber that existed, as an example, say this Tesla, this company, decides to turn their app for the car into a ride hailing app, right? It's a app that I can go into, and I say, boom, I need a ride to go to the airport. I need a ride to go to the grocery store. What am I paying for, really? I'm paying for the car. I'm paying for probably the maintenance of the car. So the cost of the car, the maintenance of the car, the energy it took to fuel the car, either electric or gas, whatever the method of fuel is. But there's no driver to pay. And so you would think about what does that mean to the cost of the car? it goes from, having to pay a driver plus other expenses to just paying for the expenses of the car. And so that will dramatically lower the cost of a ride, one would think. So as I'm thinking through that, I'm like, okay, so does this mean that transportation is going to get extremely cheap? Does this mean that companies that have self-driving technology are going to get to hoard all the profits from these cars? Are they going to get to just, if Uber's charging $80 for an airport ride, and say Tesla comes out with their own app for ride hailing that doesn't require a driver, does that mean that now they'll charge $70 and they'll keep what they would have paid the driver? And that's where it gets so fascinating, so fascinating. And as I was talking to my wife in this car, actually, one of my earlier videos from this week, this car is getting on the left lane to make a left, perfect. Her thing was like, well, I'm not really sure if I'm super comfortable getting into a robo-taxi or a car that drives itself, because I just don't trust that the car, ultimately, if there's nobody in the driver's seat, would do the right thing in a freak scenario. And so for her, the comfort came from knowing that there was somebody in front of a steering wheel, and that for her, she would pay for a driver, essentially for an Uber driver for that. And we were talking through that. But then I asked the question of, okay, so what if the self-driving car, let's call this thing the robo-taxi, the self-driving car, was $40, and then the same ride from the Uber was $80, right? The $40 one, the car drives itself, it takes you to the airport, and then the $80 one, it's a person, and then that person also takes you to the airport. Which one would you pick? And then she said, the robo-taxi. And I'm like, why? And she said, it's because the equation has changed. It's because of the cost, it's just much cheaper. And so I think the premise here becomes, okay, so are people going to be willing to pay a premium for a human interaction? Or is it more a deal of, if you convince somebody that the self-driving car is going to be just as safe, if not safer, than a human, does that just win outright? And the cost of the car just wins, right? I want to see how the car behaves here. It's going to make a left turn. Haven't done anything yet. Perfect. Okay. Does the cost just, basically go away? And it's just proving out to ensure that the car is as safe as humanly possible. And I think ultimately, as long as these car companies, like let's use Tesla as an example, as long as Tesla is able to get to a point that says, yo, this car 100% of the time is going to be way safer than anybody from Uber. It's going to get you to your destination just as quick as that person would, already safer, and it costs half because we don't have a driver to pay. It's just a car coming to pick you up. I was like, take this down to the speed limit, so we follow the laws of the road. Doesn't the self-driving car win every time? And so this person on the left is encroaching on my lane a little bit, so I am going to pass them, just because sometimes folks just struggle to keep in the lane, So then it's like, that equation to me is what's so fascinating. And as I think through it more and more, as self-driving technology becomes more and more pervasive, and more, maybe pervasive is not the right word, more and more common and just everywhere, I think it's going to cause this dynamic where you're going to have a self-driving car that's going to be way cheaper than a person that's picking you up. And it's going to become by far the most commonly used form of transportation on the road. Let's see what the car does here. It's biasing towards the left. Perfect. So it biased towards the left of the lane there to give some room to the folks on the right, which is phenomenal behavior. Some of the coolest things that full self-driving has done here with the newest updates. I'm really impressed by that, actually. It seems unstoppable, because why would you pay more, right? And so let's say you're somebody who's a Tesla investor, and you're investing in Tesla stock, and you're like, I wonder how big of a earnings thing, or how much is this going to impact the ability of Tesla to generate profit. I've been an investor in Tesla for 10 years. I've owned Teslas for the last 7 years. I've worked at the company for 4 years, a little bit over 4 years. So I'm somebody who's thinking about this equation all the time. I'm like, is Tesla going to sell this self-driving robotaxi thing for $70 a ride, a little bit less than an Uber, say, to the airport, which for me would be like $80? Or is it going to be just screw it, just pass on the savings to the customer, just make the same kind of money you would make as an Uber, but then you don't have to pay a driver, so give that all to the customer. And that becomes, say, a $40 ride or a $20 ride. And I really think it's going to be the latter over time. What I predict will happen is when this thing is fully finalized and it's hitting the roads, as you know, you've seen probably for the last 5-10 minutes we've been driving, maybe a little bit longer. I've only had to do one little thing where I've had to sort of speed it along the yield that it was stopped at, because it was probably acting in a very safe manner. I think once they get to that point that they can start getting this out, my guess is Tesla will start doing it in a way that is a little bit less than the competition, and they'll start with that sort of marketing, right? Don't pay freaking whatever dollars for an Uber. Don't pay $40 or $80 to go to the airport. Pay $60 for the Tesla robotaxi. Pay $70 for the Tesla robotaxi, right? And get the awareness going, A, and then B, get it to a point where you are able to say, well, the supply and demand market is going to call for this price. You know, it's going to be an equation of how many robotaxis do I have out on the road, and then how much are people willing to pay. And given that the allure, I would think, the reason why people would call a robotaxi is not just because you probably have privacy, there's no driver, but because it's cheaper because you're not paying a driver. One would think that the robotaxi network is going to kick off cheaper than the competition, and then over time, I think it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, to the point where it's going to be very, very affordable to be going from point A to point B, right? The equation just changes completely. And it also calls into question car ownership, right? If you're somebody who right now takes Uber to go to work, or owns a car to go to work, or takes the bus, or takes the train, right? What's stopping from this technology from becoming the lowest cost outright, because there's nobody driving it around, and it takes you from exactly where you are to where you want to be, and you have full privacy, right? Let's think about that equation a little bit more. With a bus or a train, what's some of the strengths and weaknesses of a bus or a train? With a bus or a train, it's probably the lowest cost per mile in most cases, but you are sharing the transportation system with everybody. And then you're also in a situation, why is this person going so slow? Wow. Sorry, y'all. I was very impressed with the speed of this car in front of me. Yeah. So with a train or a bus, lowest cost per mile, a bus ticket, it's always going to be cheaper than taking an Uber. Like when I used to live in Pennsylvania, a bus ticket to New York was like $36 or something. But an Uber to New York would be like, God knows what, $150 or something, right? But you have to share it. You have to share it with a lot of people, which is fine. I don't really necessarily, I'm a sharer. I like to share things. But you're in a communal space. And so the cost of the ticket is reflective of that in a sense, right? Because if you want a privacy, freaking hail an Uber, Call an Uber if you really wanted to privacy, but you have to pay premium. Same thing with the train. Cheapest cost per mile in a lot of countries But again, it's a shared space in most cases. And then the additional thing is you have to go to these places. You have to go to the bus stop. You have to go to the train station, right? So you have to take a transportation thing to go to the thing to take you on that transportation thing. Whereas with this thing here, the dynamic changes entirely, because you go from that situation and probably paying about the same as you would for, say, a bus ticket or a train ticket, I would assume, as this technology goes far into the future, to this thing just take you from point A to point B, and there's no middle points, and you're paying the same price as you would as a bus ticket. So fast forward to 2030, 2035, 2040, whenever this technology becomes fully formed, as this thing's driving me around. Imagine what the world's gonna look like when you are able to go from your house to 200 miles away, and you would pay the same as you would for a bus, and it takes you from that point to the next point, and you have privacy. Crazy, right? $30 to travel 200 miles. Seems kind of crazy to me. Feels like it's opening up a lot of opportunities by doing that. What are the things that appear with that, right? Then the additional thing to layer on is, I make sure that my GoPro still stuck to the roof of the car, is the form factor of these cars now, of these, say, these robo-taxis. If you have these transportation units taking you from point A to point B and bypassing this middle thing, right? Now you're getting to a situation where the inside of the car or the inside of this transportation unit can be completely customized to whatever you're trying to do. And I've talked about this often on my channel. If you're somebody who follows me on here, thank you very much, by the way. Thank you for being here. I probably haven't said that yet. You can have one thing that's optimized for a workspace, right? It's optimized for working. Then you can have a different solution that's optimized for hanging out, you know, like a lounge area, because you don't need a driver anymore. You don't need this thing and that thing and the pedals. You can utilize this entire space for it to do whatever you want. It can be longer, it can be wider, right? You can have a freaking bed in there for activities. I don't freaking know, right? You can have a speaker and a guitar amp and a drum set. You could have a bathtub. You could have like a karaoke thing. It's kind of like a limo on steroids, right? If you've ever been in a limo, and that limo can do anything you want it to. And then it's going to be very interesting to see how the public sort of demands things from this new service. And this is how, like, why this sort of new transportation and economy is starting to, I think, become clearer and clearer. That we're gonna have is, I believe, this is speculation. I've just been speculating for this whole video, by the way. Please don't take what I say as gospel. Just me kind of sharing my thoughts as we let this car drive me around. I think what you're gonna have is you're gonna have a lot of suppliers, a lot of third-party companies, a lot of businesses that are gonna pop up that are going to customize the interior of these cars or these transportation units to fit all the different use cases that people would want to use those things for. And you're gonna have different form factors. You're gonna have like a smaller one that's just private, lowest cost per mile. It's just a freaking seat and it's comfy, and you have a cup holder and you have a screen in front of you, and you can just black mirror yourself, you know, if you ever watched that show, black mirror yourself to your destination. Or you could have like a van form factor that is as big as a Ford E-Transit vans, you know, those bigger guys. That's you can fit, I don't know, 8 people in there. I know Tesla's working on their own van as well. Probably gonna drive itself. And then those things become a lot more entertaining. Maybe you can stand in it, and they have other things in there. Maybe they have a fridge, they have a stove. I don't know, man. I'm just like thinking of ideas, right? And so that was a huge bump, bro. How's that on the road? My God, it was like a roller coaster. Sheesh. Shut up. So yeah, man, I would love to hear in the comments what you guys are thinking about, what y'all are thinking about. I'm from Texas, my God. What y'all are thinking about with this thing. Is this really where we're going? Is cost of transportation going to go down so much that we're going to be in a situation where it's going to be cheap as hell to go everywhere? And the cost per mile is going to be a fraction of what it is now. And what does that mean for car ownership? Will people want to buy their cars anymore? Will people actually want to sit down and be like, oh my God, I want to buy this car because it looks great? Or, oh my God, I want to buy that car because it has this feature? Is it just going to go towards, I'm going to hail this type of thing because it fits my use case for that day, right? It's so fascinating, man. I'm thinking about this a lot, and I would really love to hear what you think. I would really love to hear what you think. And what else you want me to talk about on these things. I think the other thing I'm experimenting with these formats is like I'm trying to create a space on the internet, I guess, where we can kind of talk about things that are developing as they happen, and then having conversations about those things. Okay, we got a toll here. Let's see what it does. Let's see what it does. I'm very curious to see. Yeah, not good, right? So that's a perfect situation that shows where I had to take over. Car needed to be on the right lane to go through toll. Other toll openings were closed, and it needed to avoid them. What's interesting about that scenario, and I'm so glad that happened, so you can kind of see that, hey, although this technology is pretty damn close, there are these edge cases that need to be resolved, right? The car slowed down a lot for it, and I'm pretty confident it wouldn't have hit it because it was coming to a dead stop, but that was weird. Like, people don't do that. And thankfully, my side was clear and there was nobody behind me. Yeah, man. I'm just trying to create a space here that as we watch these technologies kind of come to fruition and we kind of see the warts, and we kind of see it progress along, how is this going to change the world? How is this going to change the world? If I take the minutes that I've driven in this ride, right? I've driven about roughly half an hour, I want to say. My inputs in the last half hour, the first one was maybe a second or two, and the second one was maybe like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So out of a 30-minute drive, I've actively engaged this car 12 seconds, And that's not good enough. It's not good enough. It has to get to 100% of the time for this thing to actually be truly ubiquitous. I'm gonna go ahead and push this car along as well, right here. Very good. And here's what's interesting about Texas. They have these left lane only turns, but then they have a lane right in front of you that can go forward. So I don't even know why they have a left turning lane on. Yeah, man. Let me know what you want to talk about. Let me know what you think is a cool thing to cover as we watch these the technologies develop, and specifically with this full self-driving thing, and as it continues to get better and better and better and better to the point where I literally don't have to worry about anything anymore, and I just let the car do its thing 100% of the time. What does that mean for our world? Imagine the amount of time you free up by being in this thing, and this thing's taking you everywhere, right? What does that do? That seems pretty game changing, What is time worth? How much is people's time worth? And could that be the premium? Could that be a premium that people would pay that says, I am willing to pay extra for a self-driving car because, I don't have to drive. But then again, you do that with Uber, right? So then the robotaxi equation becomes the same. Like how much, what's going to be the cost difference there? So yeah, man, so much to ponder, so much to think through. It's crazy. And let me know what you thought of this drive too. This is, if you follow Tesla and you follow full self-driving and all this good stuff, this is version 11.3.6. I've been having a really good experience with it, to be completely honest. I have a lot of drives that are 0 intervention and 0 disengagements. On this one, we had one disengagement and 2 interventions so far, I believe, if I sort of keep track of these things. And for me, I actually really like when I have to interfere with the car, because that's data that gets sent back to Tesla's mothership for them to correct it. You know, I would be getting, I mean, it would be great if there were no more, right? That means it's done. That means the software is done. But I really do think that it's good to showcase these areas where the car needs a little bit more help, because it's getting to the point now. Tesla is sort of starting to go into this area where now the car is getting very close to where you really could stop paying attention in some places, but you really shouldn't, as it enters this parking lot really well. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the full self-driving because it's not ready for parking lots just yet. And yeah, it's wild, man. It's a wild time. Very wild time. So let me know what you thought. Drop a comment. Give me a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. FYI, Twitter just came out with their monetization stuff for their for creators. And what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking about uploading all my content ad-free on Twitter with the membership. And you'll also get all the articles on Substack as well. And then let me know what else you would like to see from me on Twitter as well, because I am quite active there at Farzyness, Farzyness. All right, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Take it easy. Bye.